Good deal. Okay.
So we're going to get this started. This sounds pretty weird to me. Hopefully it's okay to you. And we're getting another speaker, so. Okay, so my name is Clark Baker. I'm the moderator here. I'm glad you all are here. This would be You Can Prompt Contra, or something to that effect. We have two panelists. We have Betsy, and she's going to speak first, surprise, and Mike Seastrom, who will speak second. I have a few comments I want to make initially, and then I'll turn it over to them. We might be able to do a little bit of dancing also. Let's see, here are my notes. I don't prompt Contra, so I'm kind of odd to be the person moderating it, but I do enjoy dancing it and have danced a reasonable amount in the last, say, 10 years. And I've also danced at the National Convention, at the New England Convention, where we occasionally have Contra halls. So, and we also do Contras with the Modern Western Club that I dance at, which is nominally a plus club. So on our club weekend, we have a midnight session of Contras that goes on for an hour or so. And we manage to attract about half the dancers there who look forward to and enjoy it each year. So we've had a pretty good success at doing some crossover from what you'd think of the modern Western dancers into the Contra dancers. I think there's several points that we want to cover today. One is when I've been exposed to Contra dancing, often it's been made very confusing with all the terminology, duple proper, improper, triple minor, and all that. And I'd hope that we kind of stay away from that and speak to it in terms that modern Western callers can understand and do. I was reminded that a friend of mine said that when you're showing Contra dancing to modern Western dancers, basically you want to treat it like a one-night stand and follow the rules that you'd have there. In other words, you want to make sure you hook them by getting them up and dancing with a minimum amount of teaching. You want to use lively music, and you want to make sure they succeed and have fun. And I think those are great rules for trying to introduce someone to anything new. Oh, is that plugged into monitor? No. Okay. If it is, we can control its volume separately. Hold on one sec. Are you at an okay volume? Yeah, you're happy. Okay. Where's my microphone? Let me just turn this way down about there. Is that okay? Okay. So, as I said, treat it like a one-night stand in that you want to get them up dancing quickly, minimum of instruction, don't make it confusing, lively music, make sure they succeed and have fun. And I think right now, if Betsy's ready, I'll give her a second. Okay, let me go back and pedal. Go ahead, Mike.
You know, I can't over-accentuate what Clark is saying enough, because it seems like so many square dancers that I've run into that have had an experience Contra dancing have had a negative experience because we have either taken too long to go through the Contra and to run it, to teach them. And we've belabored something, or that the music's been entirely boring, and the musical phrase is hard to find. And so it's incredible to when you present this to people for the first time, to make it exciting, to make it fun, to have some inflection in your voice, to have some excitement and passion about what you're doing. Because if you don't have any of it, you're not going to pass it along, and those people are going to think, Contra dancing, no big deal. They're not going to understand the fact that it's a simple dance, but it's about timing, it's about the musical phrase, it's about the music. And if you don't accentuate that with your dancers, they're going to miss the whole point. So.
The topics I asked the two panelists to cover that I thought were important from my perspective and from listening to other talks that I wasn't as enthused about are, what do you do? How do you use this in your modern Western calling? When do you present Contras to dancers? Why do you decide to bring out a Contra dance? The most important question for me is, why is this fun for the people doing it? Why are they going to like doing it? And then finally, there's the technical aspect, which maybe you're here for a little bit. How can I, a person attending this session, do what you do? How do I get the dancers lined up without spending a lot of time? How do I do the walkthrough? And how do I call the dance? In other words, prompting it versus calling it. And that's what we're going to hear from these guys. Maybe momentarily. Say the word, Betsy.
The word. The word is love. Wasn't that what the Beatles said? And I'm showing my age. All you need. Okay. You are either here because you want to learn about contras in your programs with square dancers, or because you want to learn to do them yourselves. And my first question is, how many people are already working in some way, shape, or form with Contra? Well, that's pretty good. I was going to say, that takes care of the first part of my intro. Just read it. No, seriously. Let's talk about the nature of contra dancing. Contra dancing is mostly, there's lots of different variations, and a lot of the very traditional callers or the experienced callers use all kinds of contra formations. I am going in this particular panel for the simplified introducing contras to square dancer variety. So, the contras that I am going to discuss and focus on are mainly done in long lines of dancers facing each other. Your partner is usually across the set from you. There are many different variations, but I'm limiting my discussion to the three, which will be useful depending on where and how you want to use them. The first I categorize as subsets of 4 dancers who dance a pattern together, and during that pattern, they change their position within the group of 4, and that within the subset, and then they look to one direction or another to find a new subset. These might, if the dancers involved in this line are looking at their partner across the set, it is called alternate duple or improper duple. So if you see that term when you're picking up a contra dance book, then you know that would be that type. If Mike and I would be serving as partners, and on the same side of the set, the dance would be called a Beckett formation. And that's important to know, because if you pick up something and it says Beckett, and you have the people across the set from their partner, the next thing you know, they no longer have their partner anywhere in the near vicinity. That might be a negative experience for them. So you need to know what those terms mean. Another different type would be long lines of dancers facing their partner, where the couple nearest the caller, called the top of the set, does a progression all the way to the end. It's called whole set progression dances, and these I would use. I have several of these that I would use for beginner parties. They're simple. They don't have to worry about the subsets and who they're dancing with next. The most common example that people have danced and have heard of, at least, even if they haven't danced it, is the Virginia Reel. That would be your whole set progression, and it works well at a beginner party. People even recommend it. Another subset is a circle of pairs of facing couples. This formation is called a Sicilian circle, and it can be used in square dance groups or in beginner parties to teach things, to reinforce, and to develop a whole social aspect, where instead of dancing in one group of 8, you're going to dance with pretty much, I want to say everybody in the room, but you're actually only going to dance with half the people in the room, because half of them are going around clockwise. You're going to meet them if you're going counterclockwise, but the folks going the same direction as you won't meet them. But the half of the people in the room may be a whole lot more than a subset of 8 that you'd meet in a square. So those are the types of dances that I would think we would focus on when we were introducing Contra to square dancers, because square dancers already know the terms, so this is just a variation in where we're going. And we need to translate. Several of us went to a local contra dance on Saturday, a while ago now. Friday night. It was a while ago. And the people there use similar terminology to what we would use in modern Western square dancing, but not all. They don't have as many calls. They describe the calls and they walk through so that the dancers understand the dance pattern. Square dancers already have the terminology. The walkthrough simply gets them used to the progression and the movement within the line, but you can't introduce as simple a contra to square dancers because they have not yet learned to look for anything but the puzzle if they are experienced square dancers. So you have to be careful of your choice of dancers. If you want to show experienced square dancers a contra dance, you need to select the dance so that they're not going to go, oh, boring. For the tape, that was a large yawn. So my feeling is you need to kind of have a dance that has a hook in it. One of the things that I see experienced and very dedicated contra dancers doing that worries me a lot is that they introduce a dance that has a ladies chain over, a ladies chain back, a right and left through over, a right and left through back, a star by the right, a star by the left. This might be very fine if people are into the pattern of contra dancing and are busy flirting and enjoying the physical movement of the dance. But if they are square dancers, we haven't hooked them on the physical part yet, perhaps. We have to undo some of the things that they were taught in square dance class and teach them to dance in a different style, perhaps. So we need to hook them with something that doesn't repeat because they're never going to give it a chance. The dancers who go cross-cultural lines, like Clark or me or Mike or Jill or several other people in the room, we understand when we go out to a contra dance, we expect a certain type of movement. And when we go to a square dance, we expect a certain type of movement. But square dancers who've never experienced square dancing or contra dancing don't know what to expect. And they only have one set of expectations, which we're trying to change. So now, if you want to use a contra dance at lessons, then you have a different focus. I have several senior groups, and I have used contra dancing there. When I'm teaching a new call, I walk through the pattern. The new call might be incorporated in the dance. Since the dance pattern repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats, they get the new call from one way over and over again until they're comfortable with it, and they know how the dance pattern flows, so it works as a way to reinforce what you've just taught. If you want to use, and also it allows you to, if you for some reason have those wonderful magic numbers of 7 or 11, it allows you to let all the people at the dance that night, at the lesson or the dance group that night, dance when you're doing a contra, because they can all get up and we progress. Maybe they'll wait out for 30 seconds. That's one time through the dance. But 30 seconds is a lot better than 10 minutes and a 5-minute break resting. So that's another reason why I can incorporate contras in some of my groups. It allows me to let all of the dancers who are in the room dance at the same time and get them going, rather than going, okay, couple 1, 3, 4, and 7, you're dancing this time, the others will get up next time. If you want to use contra dancing at a beginner party, then you need to limit the number of calls in the dance and have easier dances. And I believe I have a sheet of dances that we have at beginner parties. I know I have, no, actually I think I only brought I have a sheet of dances. You'll have to contact me for that one. Choice of music. The modern urban contra dancers, what I call traditional contra dancers, believe that recorded music is death. It's just not worth dancing to. Now, I grew up in modern Western square dancing, contra dancing, all this stuff. My question has always been, if you have a band that's playing on a Friday night and they're a really good band, how come it's really enjoyable to dance to the band, but if I bought their CD and used it for a contra dance, that's no longer enjoyable? That makes no sense to me. It's the same band, but it's recorded music. So my feeling is if you've got a good band and they've recorded a good album or CD or whatever, then I think that's legitimate good music. You can also use, there are albums, and I believe, you know, we can get away with recorded music in the modern Western world because the dancers are already used to it. But I don't think we should use insipid recorded music. There are albums of traditional type music which sounds Scottish or Irish. This can give a whole change of pace and a different feel to people who are used to square dancing because they're not used to dancing to this type of music. Singing calls also work very nicely. I have used upbeat music at first to capture the interest. A mellow singer works well if you want to try and relax them or give a different feel. Also have try a Dixieland jazz CDs to find different music. I have a story about that. There's a gentleman at home named Dick Myers who presents a lot of very traditional dancing. He does 16th, 17th century dancing. And he always seemed to use traditional music. One year at a national convention, I had a recording, and I played it, and it was a singing call that I really liked, and I absolutely found that I couldn't sing it. It had too much instrumentation to use as patter. But I thought, well, what a great thing to work. If I put this in where the arrow goes that way, it'll work really well. What a great thing to work for a contra dance, because I don't have to say that much over the music. Okay. I can't do this. There. There we go. One. We love technology. Technology is our friend. So I put this on, and I danced the contra dance, and Dick came rushing up to me at the end, and I went, oh, good, I'm going to die. He's going to castigate me for using this type of music. And he actually asked for the record number because he said he'd never seen his wife Lois move in so many different ways at the same time. And see if it comes through now. All right. Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to take this out. Try the monitor? No. That's all we're getting. We had more before. So there's different examples of the music that we can use. Now, my last part of the first part of my handout is timing the calls. And one of the important things that is important in contra that we have gotten away from in modern Western style dancing is delivering the call so the dancers start on the downbeat with the phrase. The most common call that we still get this in a lot of the times, not always, is side space grand square. And I have heard callers mess that up too. And when I'm dancing, to be honest, I can dance pretty much anything, but when the caller says side space grand square and the downbeat is 2 beats later, I actually find myself shuffling my feet. I can't move. I know the call. I just can't move because the downbeat isn't there for me to start on. It literally paralyzes me. If you need to hear the people who pre-cue, if you're not sure what that means, start listening to your round dance cuer and watching a really good round dance couple. Because the round dance cuers deliver the cue so that the round dancers start on the next beat of music. So if you have a club where you call and there's a round dance cuer, listen to how they say it and then listen for the downbeat of the music. That's one way that you can start hearing this. We're also going to practice that in this session. Now then you need to choose a dance and start practicing the commands. So how long does it say, or how long does it take to say, face your corner, do-si-do? How many beats does it take you to say that? Now if you have an 8-beat phrase, and it takes you 4 beats to say that, then how long do you have to wait before you say that? Yeah, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, you start saying something on 5. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, face your corner, do-si-do. They get beat 1. And that's how to start working around the timing. Then, if you're new to working with contra dancing, you choose a dance. Preferably one that you've danced somewhere. If you're very new, you need to know how this works. Go to a contra session at a national convention. Come here and we will work with you. You're already here. We don't have to tell you that. But that's for the purposes of the tape. Come to CALLERLAB and we will work with you. Go to ContraLab meeting prior to the national convention. Dance some contras. Choose a dance that you've already at least been through one time. Then practice saying the commands in the privacy of your own home where you count. And I have one of the handouts you may see has dashes and then words. And the dashes represent, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, corner swing. So there's should be 6 dashes or 6 lines before corner swing. It's a large handout, looks like this. So you choose a dance and you practice that. And we're going to practice all of that after Mike gives his part of the presentation. We're going to come back and then you guys, the doors will be locked and you will all be chanting with us. Often the dancers are written like this particular handout to help callers time the delivery of the calls. And I've included them here so the blank spaces are where you keep quiet. And I strongly recommend count to yourselves. Don't count out loud. I mean, if you're practicing at home, count out loud. But when you stand up there and on the stage, count yourself to yourself 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, face your corner, do-si-do out loud. It kind of diminishes the whole performance. But count to yourself where you need to in order to place the calls so you can deliver them for the downbeat. We have a question, so can we get a microphone to the person?
Test
yes,
1,
yes, it
2, 3.
Here you go.
Corey, guys from Pennsylvania. I was just wondering, on these 2 contra sheets, do you have suggested music, or are you getting to that?
We can get to that later.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have.
Oh. Start up there. They're up there then. Microphone is coming to Mr. Mazziotti.
Dick Mazziotti from Luray, Virginia. Betsy, how do you handle the records? I have a lot of really good contra music that starts out,
yes.
Well, it's pretty hard to say. It's pretty hard to say face your corner, swing your corner, anything in that I mean, that's all the lead time you get. What do you do?
Actually, you asked this question last year because I was listening to last year's session on tape. Yes, you did, and it wasn't answered. It's not your fault. It wasn't answered. They talked all around it, but they never actually answered it. And you asked the question last year. One of the things, that's good. We're glad you're here. One of the things that I found, I was counting that has a certain number of beats. I could actually found that on a couple of them that they used as an example, I could count to 4 on that. On that one single chord, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. So as soon as you hear the first note, you say, face your corner, do-si-do, in that dun. I think I made a horrible sound there. I beg your pardon. But what you need to do, actually, is play the record and play the record past the opening chord. And start counting. Tap your feet, tap your hand, and then put it back, and keep tapping, put it back on the opening chord, and see how many beats they actually have in that chord. Then note it somewhere. That'll tell you whether or not you can fit the words in that you need to say. I believe that is one way to start dealing with this, Dick.
I was just going to make a silly comment. I would think the first time through the dance, maybe you can leave that off. Face your corner, do-so-do sounds like a 0.
You can leave it. You can leave it off, but then you have 8 beats of music. Yes, it's a 0. All of contra dance moves end up being a 0, but then you have impacted on the beauty of the dance or the dance pattern, or you basically they're timed so they fit 64 beats of music like a singing call. So if you left the first do-so-do off the singing call figure, they'd be standing for 8 beats somewhere. You can't do that.
The way I handle that kind of thing is I let the dancers know there is one da-da, and we start the music. Sometimes I'll even put it on and let the dancers hear the da-da, and ahead of time I'll say, face your corner, da-da, do-sa-do, while the da-da goes on, and that's all you have to say, do-sa-do, and they're boom, right into it.
If I can add to it, for any piece of music you're going to use, you better know what it is before you try to use it the first time. Count it out, as Betsy said. Okay, listen to the record all the way through, and make sure that you can identify each phrase in the 64 beats of music that you're going to be using for the figure. Some music will have only a chord to start out with, and then as Mike said, you'll tell the people what you're going to do, and on the chord, you start.
Yeah, pass the mic to Corbin again. Oh, Art. That was Art Harvey from Las Cruces. He's president of CALLERLAB, or CONTRA, I beg your pardon. Okay, so that's basically the initial handout that or the initial statement that I have. Mike, you want to continue?
Okay. I think most of you have done contra dancing. I find that most of the sessions that I do are not to contra dancers, they're to square dancers. And I basically want to get them hooked to like the experience of contra dancing. I want them to know that they're not dancing a dance that's difficult, but what they are dancing, they're dancing to the musical phrase, the joy of dancing to the music, and of the timing's the most critical thing. Making one movement flow smoothly into the next movement without slowing down. I said anybody can do a right and left through in 6 steps or 5.5 or anything. The beauty of this is we can do it in 8. And very often in the walkthrough, I'll say, let's do this in 8 steps. And hey guys, that might mean a wider courtesy turn for you. And ladies, change. Sure, just time it out. You know, look at, and as Betsy said, make some eye contact when you dance this dance. That's half the joy of this dance, is the eye contact with the other dancers. And it helps the other dancers, if there's any confusion, to know exactly where they're going next. So it's part of the joy of contra dancing. When they swing, tell them they don't twirl afterwards. They don't just put them out. Usually prompt face the back of the hall or face across. You're telling them where they finish the swing. Sometimes they're going to get 1 swing in, sometimes 1.5. It depends on where they are on the line. Just have fun with it. The main thing is try to make it so that one movement flows smoothly into the next, and that's the challenge of contra dancing. It's not the figure. And then as you progress, as you finish, or as you go into the dance, after a while, they know what's coming next. Tell them you're going to cut back on the words when you do the prompts. And pretty soon you're just going to say ladies, which would mean ladies chain. Pretty soon you're going to be left for a star left. And you cut it back to where you don't say anything anymore at the end of the dance. And tell them, as very simple, say, you guys will know the sequences as we go through the dance. If you all of a sudden draw a blank, help each other out. You'll find them out there mouthing what comes next and helping each other out. And then they get to experience the joy of dancing to the music all by themselves. And that's what it's all about, is dancing to the musical phrase. I always like to introduce contras as it's one line contrary to another. Very often, if you're dancing with experienced contra dancers, they'll form on in an alternate duple automatically. They'll cross over ahead of time. I try to get all the guys in one line, all the ladies in the other line, because every once in a while it's kind of fun to do a contra. And particularly if I'm doing an 1.5-hour session during a festival, I'll progress through the formations in contra, where I'll do the alternate duple, I'll do the Beckett's formation, or the one couple facing another couple. I'll do the different formations so that they can have some variety. There's even some simple triple dances or different things that you could do with them. I certainly wouldn't start out introducing a triple or introducing these different formations, because it's way too hard. I would fail right away, and this would be a negative experience for the dancers. But if you have an hour and a half to present them, there's a logical way you can present contras so that you can vary the formation and add some variety to the contra experience for them without getting overly difficult. And the mistake that most of us make when we do these sessions, and I've made them before during my sessions and had to back out with or take that particular contra off the program later on down the line, is because it did get too difficult. It got to be something that was just a little bit confusing to the dancers. So I think it's really important that you err on the easy side and let them experience the joy of the music. And as Betsy said, there are terrific pieces of music that you can use. Now, the traditional contra dancers like traditional Scottish, you know, jigs and reels and hornpipes and such, and you'll find a lot of the old Lloyd Shaw music and the folkcraft music, and a lot of this is excellent for contras, and yet sometimes you lose the people because the music's so different. You're already presenting a different form of dance, and if you present a different form of music without telling them, listen, let's try the flavor of this type of music to be able to get into the dance, sometimes you can turn them off with the music, particularly if the music doesn't have the kind of recorded fidelity that we have in today's music. Maybe it doesn't have a real strong bass beat on it, and the dancers have a hard time finding that foot, or that bass beat to put their foot down on. The other problem is that if it's not a well-phrased piece of music, the dancers will have a hard time hearing that musical phrase. And if I can put some pieces of music on real quick, maybe I'll be able to look and show you a couple examples of that. Can we actually play records here? Okay, it's spinning. That's a good sign. Okay, all right, good. One of the pieces of records that has been used over the years, and I play this, open up this record box, and I guess I'm going to digress with a quick story here. When Bob Osgood passed away, one of the things that was passed my way was his little small box of records. And the first time that I sat that on my desk, and I sat down in my office all by myself, and I just opened up that box of records, and most of you know the smell of these things when they're a little older and they've been around a long time. You've opened up your case maybe, and maybe in a box that hasn't been opened up in a lot of years, and I just sat there and smelled that. Yeah, tears. But more importantly, I pulled these records out one by one, and a lot of these records I have, but they just having Bob's names and Bob's writing on them. I mean, he wrote the number of times through the dance, or 7 times 32, or 7 times 64. He wrote down this side. Bob had a way of putting Bob on everything, or Osgood on everything. And a lot of people have that type of personality. You ever talk with people who write their names on staplers, and they write their names on their letter openers? And I mean, some people. Anyway, I know. But anyway, so this was Bob. Anyway, here's a piece of music that I have used before with square dancers, and I love the piece of music, but the musical phrase is not as well defined. That musical phrase when you're presenting the contra, because I think that's so critical when you're doing contras, is to sell the musical phrase. And if you don't have something that the dancers are going to relate to right away, here's another piece of music that is a standard singing call type of a thing that's a little bit more definition in a musical phrase. Let's see if I can do this. And it's simple. The dancers Contra, that's a good piece of music to start. So think, I guess the point I want to make here is think about the musical phrase in your music. Sometimes I've heard or I've seen places where it says any old hoedown will do, you know, and I have a problem with that because particularly when you're introducing Contras, you want to make sure that they see the musical phrase and hear that musical phrase. That record or that piece of music that you had, Becky, can you put that on again? Basin Street Blues, great piece of music. But boy, and the musical phrase is right there. You know, because Contra dancers commonly count to 8 when they're dancing. 1, 2. To you or Betsy, you want?
I have some questions for both of you.
Please.
So this is Clark again. So for the first question I had for Betsy was, how are your Contras, especially maybe the ones you've written that you've thought about modern Western square dancers when you wrote them, different for them than just dancing in long lines? Why doesn't it just feel like modern Western dancing in long lines to them?
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that it may feel somewhat like dancing in Western square dancing in long lines to them, except that I've tried to put it together so that things work in groups of 8, which I don't do in modern. I don't worry about phrasing in modern Western square dancing calling. When I'm calling mainstream plus or whatever, I don't worry about whether I'm delivering the call so they start on the downbeat and that so that my call, you know, swing through takes 6 beats and then I need a 2-beat call in order to make it come out to 8. I don't worry about that phrasing anymore because that's not part of what they expect. When I'm writing a Contra, I am worrying about whether or not it's all going to flow together so that each time they start some of the figures, it's going to time and they start on the downbeat with each phrase.
Just to jump on that, though, if you are calling and you can consider the musical phrase in your calling, you will find that your dancers can't put their finger on why that feeling is a better feeling of dancing, but they're going to enjoy the dancing experience better. And they're going to say something like, boy, I really like your music. And what you're really doing is allow them to dance to the musical phrase. And that's huge. That's huge.
Art Harvey again. One of the things that's most difficult for modern Western square dancers when we first start doing Contra is the progression. They're used to dancing only in a 4-couple set, and when we have them in a line of more couples than that, they get confused after they do the figure one time through, and now all of a sudden they have to form a new group. Yeah, so you have to be aware of that.
You have to emphasize that. I had a remark. Okay, the mouth is working. I had a remark from someone in one of my senior groups. I have several senior groups. This one group had had 2 squares of no one under 65, no one who had ever danced on a regular basis before. And a couple times when I didn't have 2 full squares, I started introducing Contra. And this man came up with a very astute thought, which was, observation, thank you, a very astute observation, which was, it's more difficult. I'm thinking it's easy because it keeps repeating. He said it's more difficult because there's no safe place to go home to. Right. And if you keep that in mind, then you can translate that to the dancers.
And a follow-up on Clark's question about square dancing in lines versus Contra dancing. Okay, choice of music also plays a big part there. We can't use too much square dance music. Okay, most of the Contras that are through CALLERLAB and sometimes even through ContraLab and other places, they say any singing call or any hoedown. Be careful, you really can't do that, and you don't want to use only square dance music because then the people think it is square dancing in lines.
Yeah, they don't get the feeling of difference. That's why I personally hardly ever use, like I have the Basin Street Blues, but I don't use a lot of singing calls to call my Contras to. I have CDs from traditional Contra dance bands that I personally prefer, and I work with them. Sometimes what I choose for a dance depends on my group and the age of my group. If I'm working with that senior group that I mentioned, and I'm introducing a dance that is a little tougher, then I'm going to pick a piece of music that it might be a little slower so that they don't feel rushed in that dance. And I may have to listen to a couple of pieces of music before I go, no, I think this is the one that will really feel good. And it has nothing to do with the it has to do with not rushing them through the dance pattern, because they're not going to move as fast. For younger people, I might pick something entirely different.
So the next question is for both of you, especially since, well, if we play our normal records at 45 RPM, they're typically recorded to be 128 beats a minute. 128 beats a minute is about what we're doing modern Western square dancing to. In New England, we're a little slower. Some areas might be a little faster. With our aging population, we might be a little slower. So I'm betting that most people are doing modern Western square dancing somewhere between 124 and 130 beats per minute. So the question is, when you play these records, and I know as Mike slowed it down, what tempo do you contra dance to, especially with your modern Western dancers?
Well, I know that when I personally introduce it to my new dancers, I started out slightly slow, but one of the few times that I really change the speed of the music is as they're going through the contras. I'll say, okay, let's step it up a notch, and I'll turn it up as I'm going through the contra. As the group feels more and more comfortable with it, I actually change speed. I normally start at say closer to 124, but I'll bring it up to 130, and depending upon the contra, the feel of the contra, and just the music itself, it will depend upon the speed. But I commonly will start out one place and speed it up slightly.
I don't necessarily do that, and I'm not exactly sure. I record my music. If I were using a 45, it would be slightly off of 45, so it's going to be slightly slower than normal, and I don't normally have the variable speed mini disc player to speed it up. I just record it, and I'll pick the music. I know a lot of my music, so it's faster or slower, but I can't tell you the exact tempo.
I think that those tempos are much faster than what if we had timed, for example, the dance we went to on Saturday. My experience at measuring contra dance tempos, at just going out to live music contra dances, is somewhere between as low as 108 or 110. I see some 117s, maybe up to 120. Now, when you dance that, the feeling from the dancers who are doing connected dancing, balances, swings, and all the other stuff that I would encounter in a normal contra dance is that they're putting out a lot more energy than our square dancers walking through our square dance choreography. So when I've done that, people work up a sweat and are like, whoa, that was really fast. And you go, it was only 114 beats per minute. And they're like, you're kidding, especially if they know beats per minute.
Yeah, but if you do a 16-beat swing, that's a lot of energy.
Yeah, and as Clark said, the connected form of dancing that you see in traditional contras or with contra groups like that is people really connect with some eye contact as they dance. And there is a lot of balancing and swinging and that kind of action that goes. And sometimes they'll put an extra turn in or an extra spin in that piece of that movement, or an extra twirl or turn as they go around and add to that. So the dancers at those kind of dances, connected dancing, they add additional things, as some of our dancers add additional things sometimes in their dance form as a personal form of styling to fill in if it seems slow to them. So I think a lot of it is look at your group. You'll see how they're enjoying it, how they're timing, how they're working with the piece of music, and how they're dancing.
I use 108 I have music from 108 to 132. 132 you use very carefully. 124 you use very carefully. You have to, depending on the group, as Betsy said, you have to select the music for the dance, whether it's going to fit. Now, like on Saturday night, they probably played at the same tempo, but a lot of times at a live music dance, They will start out slow on purpose until the people get comfortable with the dance, and then all of a sudden the caller's gone up, and so that music has moved from 108 to 116 to 120.
Yeah, let me add one thing about that. The other thing is they do, the live band will do a medley of tunes, and the second tune will kick in and be a faster speed, and so the whole pace of the dance will pick up with the second tune or the third tune.
If any of you are not using Contra music for your square dance patter records, you're missing a bet, because I keep 1 or 2 Contra records in my patter collection and pull them out, and what I found is that the minute I put on a Contra record for a square dance patter, when they're squared up, they cavort. The dancers dance around waiting for the tip to start.
Very good point. And I think there's also some contras out there, or some pieces of contra music that are traditional out there, that allow you to set a certain set a certain attitude of dance. Very often when I use this piece of music, I walk the contra through, and then I'll say, imagine yourself in tuxedos, in formal dress. Imagine yourself in a ballroom with a huge chandelier, and imagine this piece of music, how stately you have to stand up and dance this contra.
The chord, I counted with the music as it was playing, the chord has almost 4 beats of timing in it, so you can get the words in, but you need to count it out in advance so that you know that you've got that.
And if there's a pause after the chord, also pick that up too, because there is a pause after that chord, and you have to go, take a breath, and then go. Yes?
I just wanted to say, you touched on it just briefly, Mike, that if you are a new dancer, and I'm sure in the Contra Hall at Nationals, we have seen square dancers come to the door and watch. And we'll say, oh, come on in, come on in. And they'll say, oh, well, I don't know, never done this, can't do it. And what I've liked about Contra is that you do walk it through. You form the line, you may identify what type of a formation it is, and then we walk it through at least once. If somebody says, oh, would you do it again? They do. And that, I think, puts everyone in a comfortable position.
When I'm at the National, I try to hang out at the door and just grab someone in, and they always go, oh, I've never done it. Don't worry, you'll do fine. I've never done it. Don't worry, you'll do fine. And because of the walkthrough and the fact that it's repetitious, never helped me as a dancer, but helps many people learn and do it. Occasionally you'll hit someone who's clueless, who just never orients. They aren't facing walls. They don't know what they're doing. Typically, I don't think it's our modern Western dancers. It's someone who has no dance experience, who also has kind of no body sense in kind of where they are in the bigger scheme of things. Here you go.
Corbin, guys, Pennsylvania. With St. Patty's Day just passing, I had a lot of jigs and reels out. And a question, why is it on a lot of the contra reels, the jigs and reel with the Irish and Scottish flair, does it start with like an ending? Dun-dum! It always sounds like that's the end of a song, and it's like ba-dum, and it's at the beginning. And sometimes that same ba-dum is right at the very end, too. Does that make sense? It starts with an ending.
That's the opening chord that we were talking about that was on that music Mike played. I actually have no idea why it starts like that. It's tradition. Tradition. Never mind. No. But they would be on the more traditional music in a lot of cases.
With all the live bands in New England, the caller always asks for so-called 4 potatoes. And that's, you know, bump, 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 and then the tune starts. And usually the fiddler is the one who's doing that, or if there's a keyboard like the piano, the guy's going, chomp, bump, bump, and then he starts the music. And that gets you synced up. These other type of beginnings would be, you know, kind of unknown where I'm from, so you'd have to learn to deal with it. So we talked about the tempo of the music. How long do you run your tips? How many times through the dance would you do?
As many as the record allows.
So that typically would be 7 for most of our records, unless you've artificially extended it and put it on mini disc.
Exactly. And then there's some of the traditional contra tunes that may go 9 or 11 times through. 8, yeah. But the bottom line is exactly what follow out the record. And yet, if you do live dances, you might go through how many times? Clark?
I would say that you typically run, I'm looking at a bunch I have here, anywhere from 7 3/4 minutes up to maybe 9 minutes. And since it's about 30 seconds per time through, 9 minutes would be 18 times. So 17. There's actually a good reason to do an odd number because you don't leave someone standing out the top of the dance. So the better callers will know to do that. And that may be too much for your modern Western dancers is one of my points. I know when I did the Zesty Contras last year, we were all like breathing pretty hard by the time these things were running out to 7, 8, or 9 minutes. And I think we would have been more comfortable with more like 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a little longer than our 3.5-minute singing calls, but it's not up to a super long play thing. There are some CDs available which have been specially made to go 11 or 13 times through and have dance music. You can just buy that CD and use it for your music.
The other thing is that a traditional contra dance, they stop and change partners after one dance. And I feel real strongly when if I'm just introducing a contra to square dance, sometimes it's actually on my contract. The club wants me to do a contra. If I do a contra, I do that in lieu of a tip, or sometimes we do it in lieu of rounds, and I do 1. Because 2 is just a little bit long because you got 2 walkthroughs to go through it, and it's a little bit too much, particularly if some people are sitting out and not joining in. So I say it's probably better to leave them wanting more rather than to go do 2 contras.
For music, you can also, you'll find it on the sheet that I gave you, through Lloyd Shaw. You can get custom-made CDs, and they have several wonderful danceable tracks that go 12, 14, 15 times through.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think it was Contra Tunes that they had brought out. Was it Lloyd Shaw that brought out the Contra Tunes? And they all go between 5 and 6 minutes. So if you divide that by 30 seconds, that's 11 or 12 times through the dance. That's more than sufficient. I found it interesting that, again, because I do a lot with my senior groups, I do a lot of contra with them. When I first introduced the contra to them, and I was using shorter music because I wasn't sure how much endurance they would have, they would get done with the dance, and after they got used to it, the first few times it took a while because we had to stop and re-walk through and get used to the whole idea. But after they were able to dance the dance all the way through with some of the shorter cuts of music, they would all look at me and go, well, that was only one dance. And they wanted a second one right away before they took a break. So with the 3.5 or 4 minute pieces of music, they were willing to do 2 dances. When I went to some of the Lloyd Shaw foundations and danced them for 6 minutes, they were willing to do 1 dance. But part of it depends on the group. And I don't have the times through on the music, but I do have the numbers on the digital, and so I'll be watching my readout to make sure that I'm coming to the end, so I know when it's ending. And I can't tell you how many times it goes through the dance unless I look at the digital number for the piece I'm using.
I have a couple observations I wanted to make, and then we can run right up till 5 o'clock, which is fine because my next session is in this room and I don't care. And if we have the room to dance, and if we want to dance, I think it would be interesting to actually at least do 1 or maybe 2 dances. The observations I wrote down while you guys were talking is, from what I've seen, especially with my dancers, as the caller cuts back on the cueing, that's hard for modern Western dancers. We are so trained to respond to calling that if the caller shuts up, we stop moving. So that's an interesting thing in something as you're presenting it to modern Western dancers you have to get around. And you alluded to that and said, you know, you're going to do it, warn them, and tell them they can help each other if they need it or whatever. It's a very different feeling for a modern Western dancer not to have the support of the caller always barking at them. What's the role of the caller in contras? And that actually relates to another note I took. As far as I'm concerned, if we never use the word prompter again in CALLERLAB relating to contra callers, I think that would be wonderful. I don't know if that would upset anybody. I know in the world I'm from, all the contra callers call themselves callers, and the only place where they're called prompters is when you fill out the National Square Dance Convention form and it asks if you're a prompter, and in the hallways and in some of our literature here. And I just think that's kind of an archaic term, and that's not the way, you know, quote, they refer to themselves. And if we're all trying to be part of one happy family, why don't we refer to them the same way they refer to themselves? Art has a comment.
I would just speak as chairman of ContraLab. Go to our website, contralab.org, and you'll find out that our name is the International Association of Contra Callers Incorporated.
Excellent. So I think the role of the caller at the dances I'm used to in New England is the whole evening is built on a tripod, a three-legged stool. There's the band, there's the caller, and there are the dancers. The caller's job is not to be a showman or a big shot on stage, unlike our role as modern Western callers. Instead, it's to facilitate the evening. And some of the caller's personality comes through, but not a lot. And it's to get out of the way once the dance has been facilitated. So the caller walks the dance, gets the band started, prompts for a bit, backs off, and then is done, figures out how long to let the dance run, stops the band, lets them know when they have 2, 3, 4 times through. Clearly with records it's slightly different, but...
Actually, what I was going to say was one of the things in the modern contra dances, the way you know that the dance is coming to an end is they will actually, in my area, they'll step in and call the dance one more time. When the caller comes back in and calls the dance again, that's going to be the last time through. And that's kind of a warning. And part of the way that we use that warning as a dancer is you start, if you haven't already lined up a partner, you start looking for somebody who looks good and go, you want the next dance. And seriously, that's how the really quick contra dancers get their next partner. They're lining them up as they're swinging them the last time through the last dance. Corbin has a question. So you were saying, Clark, with singing calls, I can't remember what you were saying. Go ahead, Corbin.
Oh.
I was just filling time.
No, go for it.
Corbin again. Could you, just 2 things. I'm a art major, so I'm a very visual learner. Could you illustrate 2 things for us, if there's time? Static square of square dancers, how to get them into these formations, and can you show us the difference between alternate, proper, improper,
alternate, duple, proper,
and Beckett? Okay. Please and thanks.
Sure. May I have a square? Yes. After that dessert. All right. Now, you guys all squared up, and that's really good, but I had intended to do a contra this time, so let's change our formation. Couple 1, would you California twirl and face me? Couple 2, would you go stand behind couple 1? Couple 3, move forward, and couple 4, walk around and stand behind couple number 3. Everybody face your partner and back away. And smile at your partner. I might actually, if I were at a square dance club and they all got up and were expecting a square, I might actually say, if you don't want to do this, this will be the time to go and I won't look. And if I had them in squares, I might then join 2 squares together because I think 4 couples is way too small a group. You might want to turn and assume I'm really standing over there for dancing purposes. Yeah, so gentlemen now have their back to the chairs and that's it. It's more comfortable. Can we get anybody else up to join our line? That would be great. The contras I gave you are two couple dances. They dance in subsets of two couples, and I believe they're all alternate duples, and most of the except for one that's proper. Okay, good. Now, Clark, now this particular set is at what we call at this point proper. All of the ladies, including Dick, who is being a lady, all of the ladies are on one side, all the men are on the other side. If you go back and look at films and things that show colonial times, it was considered improper to mix men and ladies in a lot of situations. They didn't always sit together, and they certainly didn't dance intermingled. So if you watch them do the minuet in some historical movie, the ladies will all be on one side, the men will all be on the other side, and they barely touch fingertips, because otherwise you might ruin the lady's reputation. I'm possibly exaggerating, but seriously, it was considered improper to mix the. Now, Clark is the top of the set where the group starts. Is starting with a couple closest to Clark. Would they join hands with the people next to them and their partner and make a group of 4? And the next 4 couples join hands, and the next 4 couples join hands. Now, in each of these groups of 4, would the couple nearest the caller being Clark right now, would you change places with your partner?
So I want to make a couple of comments about what happened there. Actually, go back for 1 sec, undo the switch. First off, what she said is great, and this is abbreviated to hands 4. You'll just go to dancer here, hands 4, they all join hands in circles of 4. But join hands in circles of 4. Freeze. Which way is everyone facing? They aren't oriented up and down the set or across or anything. They're just kind of there, and that'll happen with real dancers. They don't quite know which way to face and what's going on, especially if they've never been here. If I'm dancing, I'm always facing a wall, because that's kind of me. But that's not everybody. And then, as she said, some people say have the 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th. I don't like that terminology. I just tell people, well, often in each circle, the people closest to me change places with your partner. So do that. Some people call that the ones.
If you're working with people who haven't danced Contra a lot, to join hands in the group of 4 establishes your first subset, and you can tell people, look, this is the group you're going to be dancing with in the middle now. And then what I would do to make it more clear, a lot of the dances I might have would start with face your corner, do-so-do. Now the ladies always face right for their corner, the men always face left. That's a nice universal thing. So everybody face your corner. Now the way you are looking right now in your set will be the way that you will be moving. So when you are done with the pattern of the dance, everyone who has their back to me, I'm Clark, everyone who has their back to me will be moving one place away from me and find a new couple. And if you don't find a new couple, we'll talk about that in a minute. And everyone who is facing towards me will be moving one place towards me and finding a new couple. This would be the sort of explanation I would use for square dancers who have never done this progression and have no idea what progression means.
If I'm speaking to square modern Western callers, can everyone hold on to their partner beside them for a sec? I call this a giant 8 chain through. Everyone's got their partner. It looks like a giant 8 chain through. You know which way you're facing. Everything's good. In each circle of 4, circle left a quarter. Grab hands along the line. You got long lines. You're with your partner. I call these these are like 1P, 2P lines on it. They're just infinite down there. These are the 2 places we do dances from. This one is called Beckett, named after Camp Beckett in Massachusetts, where the first Beckett reel was written, I believe. And uncircle left a quarter. This one's the one that goes with that name of duple improper. And those are or alternate duple or whatever. Those are the only 2 places that dances happen. Now, sometimes when you're standing here, your first move is going to be to do-so-do right where you're facing. Sometimes it's the following. Everyone quarter in or face in, make long lines. And sometimes the first dance starts here, and you might go forward and back or do something. But this one is the duple improper, and it looks like a giant 8 chain through. And that's the way I think about it as a square dance caller. Face like you're in a giant 8 chain through. The first dance you do, when you're all done, magically this will be accomplished, pass through. Then you have a new group of 4, you're ready to dance, and then magically trade by, go, trade on the ends, the 8 pass through again, trade places here, and then poof, you're ready to go again, and then the dance will cause you to do that pass through action. The trade has to happen on the end. You have to tell people or warn them. Art's going to say something.
In the handout, they use the terms actives and inactives. I used to use that. I quit because it's a very bad terminology. Yesterday when I was doing the beginner type contras in the workshop in the afternoon. Couples 1 and 2, after I had the hands 4, pass it on down. The couple closest to the caller in each mini group is couple number 1. Your number is going to remain the same until you get to the end of the line and get a rest for half a minute. The other couples are number 2 couples. They're moving towards the caller or the music. Their number remains the same until they get to the end of the line and get a rest for half a minute. If we're doing a proper dance, they don't change. If they're improper, they have to change places.
Right. I have used that term, 1s, 3s, 5s, every other couple pass through and you turn back. And if you were the couple that actually does the passing and turn around, you're the active couple. You've actually changed places from the original formation. So I'll call them the active couples and the inactive couples. The active couples are moving down, the inactive couples are moving up. I agree, the term is not my favorite term, but it's been in use for a long time. 1s and 2s, I like that, 1s and 2s also. So yeah, I think those are all terms.
The reason I don't like 1s and 2s and actives and inactives is 90% of our dances, and probably the dances we should be doing, it doesn't matter whether you're active or inactive. And so why make them identify something and have... I found contras, when I first did them, very off-putting. All this weird terminology, you guys gross out on this terminology. Actives, inactives, 1s, 2s, all this stuff, triple minor. So the more I can stay away from it, here's an 8-chain 3, you're going to dance with these people. Just get on with the dance. It's circle left, it's Allman left, it's whatever. I'm sorry, Dick had a comment, unless you want to bounce off that.
I want to just answer. The first dance that's on the handout does use the term active. That particular dance has a more active role for those people. They're doing something. I would not necessarily use that particular dance first in a contra introduction, but I would build up to where they might have a place where the term does actually apply, and that would be the dance that I would use because I like it.
I agree with Becky. I agree with Betsy. When I do an introduction, I never use the concept of actives and inactives. I don't even mention it. I say some of you are progressing down, some of you are progressing up, and I agree with Clark. It's too much information. It's not necessary. And it's not if I'm doing an hour-and-a-half session with dancers that have come to just dance contras, then down the line I'll say, okay, let's dig a little deeper. Let's introduce another concept like 1s and 3s or 2s and 4s in contra dancing. We have actives or inactives. I haven't used the term 1s and 2s, but that's very simple. It's easy enough to do, and I think probably easier for the dancers. Dick?
Yeah, this has nothing at all to do with what you're talking about right now. But Clark, you were having us pass through and pass through and pass through. I do the same thing with new dancers, except that I do it with a do-sa-do and a pass through, because you're almost always ending up with a do-sa-do with a new corner. But to get them to see the progression that you're going to move, also that you're going to get up here and have to turn around. But do-sa-do, pass through, do-sa-do, pass through, do-sa-do, pass through, because that, in essence, is what the whole contra dance is.
And that's an important point in choosing dances. Hopefully the ones we've given you and the ones you encounter have easy-to-see progressions, like the do-sa-do or do-sa-do once and a half, which accomplishes the pass-through. There's some dances, which contra dancers do all the time, that have harder-to-see progressions. And until you have this set sense of where you're headed, you often don't know where to look next.
While you're walking the mic over to Art, one of the things that I found when I was introducing contras to some of the groups was they didn't know how long they were waiting out, so they would try and get back in too soon. And I found that if I told them, when you hear me say face your corner, do-sa-do, that will be when you get back in. That's the start of the dance. They could assimilate that and wait until the face your corner do-sa-do came along. So if you tell people the start of the dance are these words, listen for these words, then that was an important factor.
Since we have a group of 6 couples up here, why don't we have one of the people in here that's wanting to try this, take a mic and try it.
Yeah, I was going to have us all do it together.
Should we try that? First question is, Corbin, did we answer your question, or we completely baffle you? Go ahead.
So the Beckett is basically just lines.
Yeah.
Facing lines.
Well,
sorry.
Okay, stop right here. Where is your partner right now? Yeah. Now join hands and circle left a quarter in your group of 4. Where is your partner? Beside you. And that's one of the major differences.
Okay. And
I personally have a problem with saying Beckett's. I think it's easier if you're introducing this to brand new dancers, say facing couples.
Okay.
Your partner is with you in your line, which is an unusual. And say facing couples. I think they can identify. They see it better.
I wasn't thinking of using the terms for the dancers, but for the caller when you pick up a dance, so you know which, where you need to put the dancers.
Improper is the gents on one side facing the ladies. That's proper.
That's proper.
And then the 8 chain through
is improper.
Is improper. Now, what's the alternate?
It's same as improper.
Same thing.
It's an alternate wording for improper.
Gotcha.
Just in case you don't want to be too risque. You want me to do one?
Well, Betsy's picking a dance. Uncircle yourselves. Well, Betsy's picking a dance to do. I have a bunch of dances, and I'll be doing those Tuesday night after the milestone dance. So if you still have energy, these are all reasonably slow-paced but energetic. They have swings and all that other stuff in them. We did them last year. We had about 50 people. It worked well. I'll be doing them again. You can practice prompting while you're going along on those dances. They're all simple. I'll walk through all of them.
One of the now we're kind of dancing. One of the reasons I had the big handout was what I had hoped and envisioned we would all sit and chant it together. So maybe I'll do a couple of changes of the dance, and then we can all talk about it together. We'll do the same dance. Okay. Face your corner and do-si-do. We're going to walk it through. With your corner, Alaman right. Step up with the right hand. The body should carry. Turn all the way and about a quarter more. Keep going until you have long ocean waves. Keep going. You haven't turned. That's full around right there. Turn another quarter. No, turn another quarter. You have long ocean waves. The men are facing in. The men are facing in. The ladies are facing out. You haven't gone quite far enough. You went 3/4. I feel much better. Every gentleman is now looking at his partner's back. Okay. Now, and that's part of it, that you have to make sure you tell people exactly where they're going. If you say every man's looking at his partner's back, that will tell them pretty clearly. And now we're going to balance. When you balance in long waves, don't go forward and back. Go sideways. Go to the right and make eye contact with them. Then go to the left and make eye contact with them. Try, no, almost, but not quite. And don't steal any kisses.
You know, this is a wonderful dance to do, and these balances are really incredible. They're the only thing about if you introduce this to brand new dancers or first-time contra dancers is you've introduced that turn all the way around, which sometimes the square dancers is something they're not used to, and they have a problem. And particularly as the dance goes along, being confused by that or being dizzy by that. The other thing is the sideways balance is awesome because it teaches that interaction that is so neat in contra dancing. But it's, again, another movement that your square dancers are not used to. So sometimes if you put more of one of those in a contra, you'll find that it can be confusing. You guys will have no problem, though.
Right. Exactly, and this basically, this early part is the hook in this dance. The rest of it is going to be pretty standard. Everybody in your group of 4, you're going to circulate. The men are going to move across, the ladies slip over. Swing your partner. And so this was written so that if they're not quite sure and they were confused earlier, they're going to find their partner and swing no matter what. Face across. Oh, actually, I beg your pardon. You were right. Face away and go down the center 4 line. California twirl, turn her under and come back. Bend the line in the ladies' chain. That's all 1/8. Everybody star through. Pass through. Did you find a new corner for the do-si-do? I'm so happy. If you didn't find a new corner for the do-si-do, change places with your partner immediately. And the phrase I use is if you don't change places with your partner immediately in like that trade by action, what will happen is one of 2 things. One is you will remember and scramble at the end, or 2 is you will forget and you will change sex. So I would really prefer that you change sides rather than changing sex.
Could we give Mike a big hand? He has to leave right now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now we have someone else has to leave. Clark's going to step in and dance. Okay, so that's one time through the dance. You guys are smart. You don't need to rehearse it again. Everybody, we need another girl in here. Okay. Everybody is facing somebody right now. Just for me, pass through. I'm simply moving you along so we can all start together. He's okay. So we're all smiling in our corner. That looks better. And we're ready to do-sa-do. This is one of these. Enough. Now we're all going to go back to our seats and we're all going to call it. Yeah. Well, reason being, Clark, that they don't. Otherwise, they'd all be holding the sheet of paper in front of them. Okay. Well, too late. Everybody's set. Well, save your energy for Clark's dance. Okay. Not off the top of my head.
The question was, do you have suggestions?
The question was, do I have suggested music? And the answer is not off the top of my head. If you call me, I can give you some suggested music. But at this point in time, I do not necessarily. They can.
Hold it.
The question is. You want? Go ahead. Go for it. The question is, do they work for any, and are they all or are they all 64 beats? The ones I included are 64 beat repetitions through the dance, so they would work with a lot of different. They would work with singing calls or anything that has 64 beats or however many bars that is. I don't speak in bars, so you'll have to. I just drink. No, so you'll have to talk in 64 beats. But that's what we have. So, yes, they would be translatable to a lot of different pieces of music as long as they have good phrasing with 64 beats. Now, everybody indulge me. Do you have your handout that has the Battle of the Bands? Ask me after the session. I'll tell you why it's called that. But I don't have time now because we want to get the prompting in. The band will play. Let's try it again. I want to hear you guys. Idea. Do we want to try the inflation reel with a different piece of music? Go for it. Not that one though. I think we will have to forgo that pleasure and let Clark do his next session.
Let's give Betsy a big hand.
And thank you all. I hope this helped you and be comfortable with contras.